Hey everyone, so in today's video, we're going to shoot some film. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a pretty sweet assortment of cameras to choose from, so I've laid them out on a table in the other room. With older cameras, I find you have a lot more choice when it comes to unique ergonomics and features. So let's have a look. Now, I realize it probably seems a little bit hypocritical with all these cameras laid out, but I'm a big advocate that you can take great photos no matter what you're working with. Sure, it might be a lot harder with a more rudimentary camera, but at the end of the day, I think creativity and artistry prevails. Here we've got our glorious table of cameras, and I'll talk a little bit about each one. On the left, we've got Nikon's f4 and f5. These were flagship Nikon 35mm cameras, and we've got a good selection of glass to go with them. These cameras both have great metering modes to help you get perfect exposures. They also have motor drives in the bottom that allow for high-speed shooting, like 6 or 8 frames per second respectively. Moving up to medium format, we get even more detail with bigger negatives. The Pentagon 6 is a real classic. It was made in East Germany, it's got great Zeiss glass and style for days. The Makina 6.7 shoots 6.7 negatives, and it's a really nice compact camera. It's got a great meter and excellent Nikon glass. Over here we have the Pentax 6.7 and the 6.7 II. Both are super easy to shoot. They're like a supersized SLR with beautiful lenses and can make amazing images. We've also got some TLRs, a Mamiya C330 and a Yashica Alpha. TLRs are a super simple design. They're really quiet to shoot and take wonderful 6x6 medium format photos. And of course, dominating the table is this 4x5 large format camera. This wood camera shoots sheet film and creates negatives at least 3 or 4 times more detailed than anything else on this table. So I'm thinking bigger is always better, right? So let's go shoot Oh, wait a minute. Is that... No.
It's the baby brownie.
It's the baby brownie.
The Kodak Baby Brownie.
Baby brownie, Kodak baby brownie.
Okay, so all jokes aside, we're gonna shoot the baby. We're gonna shoot film with the baby brownie. We've got some really simple 1930s technology here. The camera itself is made out of Bakelite, which is kind of like a precursor to modern plastic. The material is fairly brittle, and there's a few areas that are cracked at the front and back that may let light in, but it's nothing that a little bit of gaff tape won't fix. So let's talk about features. We've got a pop-up viewfinder for framing up our shots. We've got a manual winder on the top for advancing film, and there's a little red window here on the back to make sure you've advanced it the correct amount. Metering, it's got no metering whatsoever. Shutter speeds, it's got one shutter speed, a 50th of a second, just this mechanical little tab here, and we should be able to work with that. The aperture of the lens is fixed at f16, and while this isn't great for letting light in, it will make sure everything from 10 feet to infinity is focused. And I think that's about it for the features. So the Baby Brownie shoots 127 format film, which isn't a very common format. It's almost like a mini roll of medium format film, in which when you shoot the camera, you take up the film onto a second little spool within. 127 format film was introduced by Kodak back in 1912, and it was actually, from what I've read, a pretty popular format up until about the 1960s. A quick online is showing me that the only currently produced 127 format film is from Japan, and it's called Rira. They make a chrome or a slide film variant, and also a black and white variant. It also looks like Ilford may occasionally release some black and white film on 127 format. In addition to these rolls, you can occasionally find homemade rolls where people have taken 120 format film and cut it down and respooled it into 127 format. Now, I know I have a few rolls of 127 stashed away, so let's go have a look. Okay, here's our 127 format films. We've got the Rira pan from Japan. It's 100 ISO, and it actually is still fresh. It expires late 2020. We've also got the Rira Chrome, which will be really cool to shoot some slides on this. They're called super slides when they're larger than 35mm. Unfortunately, I just opened the lid on this guy, and the top of the spool popped off, exposing some of the film just below it. So I'm worried that the top of the film here is going to be a bit fogged, but I'm still going to give it a go. And the last film I have in this format is F-Key R100. This is a really nice film, and I might actually save it for if I find a more robust 127 format camera. Okay, so how are we going to shoot this camera? Well, with a modern conventional camera, we'd go find our scene and we'd adjust the settings in order to get a proper exposure. But with this camera, we've got that fixed aperture, we've got a fixed shutter speed, and only one option for film ISO. So we're actually going to have to kind of go seek out scenes that meet the criteria for the camera. And to be honest, a dimly lit scene just isn't going to work for this thing. Now, for those of you familiar with the Sunny 16 rule, you can kind of infer that this camera was meant to be shot in broad daylight with about 50 ISO film. Like I said before, I've only got 100 speed film, which leaves us with one extra stop of light. Now, this isn't bad at all, as we're able to get rid of some of the extra light hitting the lens through the use of filters. Whereas if we were on the opposite side and we needed to add light, the only really way to do that is through artificial lighting or adding some like studio lights. So let's go load up the camera and start shooting. Alright, so it's been a few days since I shot with the Baby Brownie, and since then I've had time to develop the film, both the slide film and the black and white. I've scanned it up and even had time to trim the beard. Overall, I think the photos turned out pretty good. A few points to bring up though. First off is the Baby Brownie, the viewfinder. Either the viewfinder's a liar or I'm just not using it correctly. But all the images turned out much wider than what I'd seen through the viewfinder and what I was expecting. I'll show you the images uncropped, but you can appreciate there's some elements towards the edges of the frame that I wasn't expecting. Also, the light leak that I was concerned about on the slide film because the top of the spool broke off was only about 1 millimeter and thankfully didn't affect the photos. Now, keep in mind that I used a flatbed scanner without a holder to scan these, so it's not going to be perfect, but there's definitely enough detail for you to get an appreciation of the setup. Okay, so let's first look at the black and white film. Here's the slide film, starting with probably my favorite photo from the rolls. The Ririchrome color is great and really complements this camera, giving the images a kind of dreamy and vintage look. Okay, final thoughts. So 127 as a film format is actually pretty cool, and I kind of wish there were more film and camera options. The film itself actually seems more compact overall, and the film creates much larger negatives and slides, especially given that it doesn't have to waste all this area that 35mm wastes on the sprockets. However, there is a drawback that only gives you 8 shots on a camera like this, and 12 on a square shooting camera. So the Baby Brownie itself held up pretty well. At a glance, I wouldn't have guessed that any of these photos were taken with an almost 90-year-old camera, and a simple one at that. It clearly has a lot of limitations for shooting, but it does a decent job doing what it was designed for, which is letting focused light hit the film. So, is it my best camera? Well, probably not, but it's all subjective anyway. I don't think there is a best camera. And to be honest, a lot of what I enjoy about photography is the challenge and journey to go out and make photos that I'm proud of, and shooting with this thing, it definitely hit its mark. So let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.